All that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither, deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes of fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king. Hey everyone, Yoiston here, bringing you guys the first of my remade videos. Roughly 2.5 years ago, I made my first epic character history with Aragorn, and I figure it's about time to renew it. Without further ado, let's begin the discussion of this great hero of men. Born in 2931 of the Third Age to Arathorn, the chieftain of the Dunedain, and his wife Gilrain, Aragorn II was destined for greatness even from a young age, as his grandmother Ivarwin foresaw that he would one day wear a green stone of great importance on his breast. This stone would serve to be a very important part of Aragorn's history and future events. For 2 years, Aragorn lived with his kin, the Rangers, out in the wild. His father Arathorn was slain by an orc arrow to the eye, however, and Gilrain was forced to take Aragorn to safety, as he was now the sole heir to the line of Barahir and the High King Elendil. Thus, Lord Elrond of Rivendell took on the responsibility to help raise Aragorn in his borders, adopting the boy like his own son. In the hope to keep this child a secret from the servants of Sauron, Elrond named him Estel, meaning hope in Sindarin Elvish. During his time in Rivendell, Aragorn adventured with Elladan and Elrohir, the two twin sons of Elrond. He came to see these elves as brothers. When Aragorn reached the age of 20 and returned from an adventure with these elves, Elrond told the young man of his lineage and his true name. Elrond bestowed upon his grandnephew of many centuries the shards of Narsil and the Ring of Barahir, both being heirlooms of Aragorn's line. The shards were of the sword that had cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand in the days of Elendil and his sons, while the Ring of Barahir was of the First Age. It had been given to his forefather by an elven king named Finrod. However, there was one item that Elrond withheld from Aragorn until the young man earned his right to it. This relic was the Scepter of Annúminas, the symbol of the king in Arnor. This he would have to earn if he were to ever become king. Another prize that Aragorn would have to earn was Arwen's love. It was around this time that Aragorn first met the lady when she had returned from her grandmother Galadriel's land of Lothlorien. Upon their first meeting, Aragorn mistook Arwen for Lady Luthien, thinking he had strayed into a dream. At first he called her by that name and fell in love with the elf maiden. And as we will come to see, Aragorn's love for Arwen would be a driving motivation for him throughout his entire story. And so, Aragorn took on the role of chieftain of the Dunedain Rangers, like his father and forefathers before him. Aragorn lived among his kin in the wild, and eventually met the Grey Wanderer, Gandalf, in 2956 of the Third Age. These two became great friends, and Gandalf eventually advised Aragorn to post some of his rangers on the border of the Shire, inhabited by the hobbits that Gandalf admired so much. Aragorn took this advice, and set a watch upon these lands to protect its people, and he soon became known as Strider in the nearby areas. Starting the year after, from 2957 to 2980, Aragorn went on great journeys, coming even to Rohan and Gondor, under the name of Thorongil, meaning Eagle of the Star. During these times, Aragorn helped King Thengel and Steward Ecthelion II in skirmishes and small military efforts against the growing shadow of Sauron and his allies. This is how the Ranger gained many skills that he would use in the War of the Ring to combat Sauron. Most renowned of Thorongil's actions were those that he took against the Corsairs of Umbar that were harassing Gondor at the time. Aragorn took a small navy of ships from Gondor southward to Umbar in 2980, and it was there where he burned many of their ships and defeated the Lord of the Corsairs in single combat. After this historic victory, Aragorn left the men of Gondor and continued his travels. Later that year, Aragorn encountered Lady Arwen again, but this time in Ciaran Amroth in Lothlorien. In this moment, the man and the elf loved one another. Aragorn gave to Arwen the Ring of Barahir and swore himself to her, and in response, Arwen offered her hand in marriage. Such a marriage would end in the relinquishing of Arwen's elven immortality and Aragorn's death, so Elrond prevented the two from getting married until Aragorn became both the King of Gondor and Arnor, as he feared for his daughter. I believe that Elrond thought this task would be impossible, so Arwen would never marry him. But Elrond was wrong, as we shall come to see. A similar request was made in the Tale of Beren and Luthien, when Luthien's father Thingol asked Beren to retrieve a Silmaril from the crown of Melkor, but again, the tale does not go as the Elven Lord expected. Sometime before the events of The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn traversed the dwarven mine of Khazad-dûm and the far lands of Rhûn and Harad. We are not given a specific date for these events, but I imagine that they happened sometime between 2980 and 3001 of the Third Age. After these journeys, Aragorn began to help Gandalf in the search for Gollum, who knew of Sauron's One Ring and its newest keeper, Bilbo Baggins. The Dark Lord had once again proclaimed himself from the land of Mordor, which meant that Aragorn's destiny was almost at hand. 6 years later, Aragorn visited his mother Gilrain in Rivendell before the woman passed away. This event meant that Aragorn was now the last member of his family, and his time was now or never. Over the next few years, Aragorn intermittently hunted for Gollum, until he eventually captured the creature in the Dead Marshes, in 3017, a year before Frodo left the Shire. From here, Aragorn took his captive north through the Emyn and into Lothlorien to avoid being found by Sauron's servants. The elves of Lothlorien sent Gandalf word of Gollum's capture, and with the help of the Beornings, Aragorn passed into northern Mirkwood, where Thranduil's elves held Gollum as a prisoner. After this, Aragorn met Gandalf at Sarn Ford, south of the Shire, to discuss Frodo and his plan to leave the Shire with the One Ring. Thus we begin Aragorn's tale during the War of the Ring. As these events are well described in the books, I will discuss them briefly. Aragorn once again took the name of Strider, and found Frodo and his companions in the Prancing Pony in Bree. With the Rangers' help, the ring made its way to Weathertop, where Aragorn demonstrated his fighting skills to both the Nazgûl and the Hobbits, as he slowly began to reveal himself to the Dark Lord Sauron. After Frodo was stabbed with a Morgul blade, Aragorn took the company into the Trollshaws, and found the elf Glorfindel, who took the Hobbit to the Ford of Brunine, with the Ranger and the other Hobbits following close behind. During his time in Imladris, Aragorn further courted Arwen, and became a member of the Fellowship of the Ring. Now was his time to reunite the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor, so the shards of Narsil that he still bore were reforged into Andúril, the Flame of the West, by Elrond's Forge Masters. With his new blade and confidence, Aragorn aided the company of the One Ring, recommending for them to take the Redhorn Pass over the Misty Mountains. But Aragorn's hopes were thwarted, and the company took the path through Moria, resulting in Gandalf's death by the Balrog. From here, Aragorn led the company, and he brought them to Lothlorien, where his grandmother's vision about the Green Stone would soon be realized. Galadriel bestowed the Elessar stone from the days of old onto Aragorn, who would carry the name Elessar after he became king, because of this stone. Galadriel also sent word to Elrond for the assembly of Aragorn's kin to march south and help him. After Lothlorien, Aragorn continued to lead the company, even through his doubts in decision-making. Once the company split, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli became the three hunters in Rohan, looking for their friends Merry and Pippin who were captured by orcs. This new journey led them to Éomer, the nephew of the King of Rohan, and Gandalf the White returned from death in the Fangorn Forest. After these chance encounters, Aragorn and his companions went to Edoras to help Rohan in its time of need, before fighting in the Battle of Helm's Deep and going to Isengard to confront Saruman afterwards. Once the wizard was managed, the sons of Elrond and the rangers from the north who served Aragorn had found him, and convinced him to take the paths of the dead, just as Galadriel had hoped. At this point, Aragorn fully revealed himself to all as a rightful king, and so he took Saruman's Palantir and directly communicated with Sauron, showing him Andúril, reforged from the shards of the sword that had taken the One Ring from Sauron. With the people that Aragorn saw as brothers, the future king journeyed through the paths of the dead and came to the Stone of Erech. Using the power of his lineage, Aragorn called upon these oathless men to finally fulfill their oaths at last, that they had made to his ancestor Isildur, to fight Sauron for the people of Gondor. With his ever-growing company, Aragorn hastily went to fight Sauron's allies and servants. Coming to Pelargir, the Oathbreakers helped the heir of Isildur defeat the Corsairs once again, and the dead men were released from their service for their aid. After this battle, Aragorn took his forces, and the armies from South Gondor, up the river Anduin on the Corsair boats, and so came into the Battle of Pelennor Fields outside of Minas Tirith. With Aragorn's help, the free peoples prevailed against Sauron, but many of them were left with wounds by natural and unnatural causes. Such pains needed the healing of a king, and so Aragorn snuck into Minas Tirith's houses of healing, and brought Merry, Éowyn, and Faramir back from the brink of death. Such an action proved Aragorn as a worthy king of Gondor and Arnor, but Sauron would need to be defeated before Aragorn took the throne. Using military strategy, Aragorn took a small army to the Black Gate to divert the attention of Sauron from the imminent destruction of the One Ring. Aragorn's plan had worked, as Sauron believed the king was using the One Ring himself, but in the end Sauron was very wrong in his assessment. After the destruction of the One Ring and the defeat of Sauron, Aragorn was crowned king by his old friend Gandalf outside of the walls of Minas Tirith. And after his coronation, Gandalf took Aragorn up the slopes of Mount Mindolluin, where the new king found a sapling of another white tree, as the old one in Minas Tirith had perished. Aragorn had done the impossible, and reunited the kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor. So, Elrond was true to his word, and let his daughter Arwen wed King Elessar, despite Arwen having to give up her immortality for him. The last time we saw Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings, he held the Elessar Stone in farewell to Frodo, Gandalf, and their company. After this event, King Elessar and Queen Arwen ruled the reunited kingdom for many years, according to Appendix A of The Return of the King, and they had many daughters and a son named Eldarion. Aragorn founded the House of Telcontar, and rebuilt the world in the Fourth Age. He had even made peace with many of the Easterlings and Haradrim that had plagued Gondor for so long. As for domestic matters, King Elessar put protections on both the Shire and the Druidain Forest, all while strengthening the alliance between Gondor and Rohan. Aragorn had truly helped save the world, but as all men are mortal, the king's time eventually came. King Elessar chose to pass away at the age of 210, after 122 years as king, and his son, Eldarion, succeeded him. The king was buried next to his friends Pippin and Merry of the Shire, who had come southward in their final days. Arwen, who yet lived, spent the rest of her years in Lothlorien, with all that remained of her elven kin. I believe she had given Eldarion the Ring of Barahir before she left, however. And so Middle-earth thrived, in no small part due to Aragorn's deeds. This one person had restored so much good to the world, and for that reason, he is my favorite overall character in all of Tolkien's Legendarium. Aragorn teaches us that there is always hope, no matter the situation, and such a lesson is always worthy of remembrance. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this updated video. If you did, please hit that like button and share this with someone who you think might like to learn about Aragorn. Let me know what you all think about this character in the comments down below, and please let me know what video you would like to see remade. I'm going to try to aim for some of my earlier videos, so I would really appreciate suggestions that predate my first Q&A video. If you would like to contact me more directly, please join us on Facebook and Twitter through the links in the description below, and subscribe to join the Men of the West and all of the free peoples today. Here's to the first journey in 2018. Thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my friends.